in a few weeks' time, it is the carp fishing season. Those who have been out over winter, fair play to you, but there's a lot of people who won't have been out over winter, and it's time to dust them rods off. We've come here today to Fenland Fisheries. It's a small day ticket in the Cambridgeshire Fens, and I always like doing something like this leading up to the kind of warmer period and when spring begins. Go out, go to a little day ticket. We're just doing a day session today and we're trying to get a bend in the rod. We're going to kind of
have a competition.
It's not a competition.
It's
a bit of a not a challenge. It's me and Henry versus Fenland, but we're going to go with two different tactics.
It's me versus you.
Two different tactics. I'm going to go for PVA Mesh. Henry's going to go for
solid bags.
And we're going to see how we get on. Like I say, we are only here for the day, so we're going to see how we do.
And who's the better angler?
And we're going to beat Fenland, not each other.
Each other.
The lake's kind of split into two halves. It actually used to be two lakes. I used to come here as a kid and it used to be two different lakes, but it's now one. They've dug out the middle and it's split into two halves. Got the main body of the lake in front of me and a smaller pool behind me. And my plan is to fish on this causeway, fish one on either side. This time of year, you know, finding the fish is kind of paramount. So that's going to be my approach. I'm going to fish, like I say, mesh bags, but in two kind of different styles. One's going to be sort of a super singles approach. It is just like single hook bait fishing, but with a little mesh bag, which is full of fizz and stick mix and all sorts of goodness. And that one, I'm going to fish into the main body. I'm going to just move that one around until I find something. And then the other one is going to be a bit of a bigger bag, bit more food based. And that one I'm going to fish over on that far margin there. If one of them works, I'll probably switch both tactics over to that same thing and fish that area. But it's all about trying to find the fish at this point in time. So first and foremost, what is PVA? For a lot of carp anglers, you'll know what it is, you've used it before, but if you're just getting into it, I'm going to start with the absolute basics of what is it? What is PVA? It is a substance that has become extremely helpful for carp anglers because you can load it with bait. When it hits the water and sinks to the bottom, it takes a minute or so, but it completely dissolves, completely disperses into the water, leaving your bait on the bottom exposed to the carp.
Bit of a hectic rush to get the rods out. With the rain coming down, it's not really the ideal weather to be fishing with solid bags. But we got the rods out now. We're fishing, two rods in position. I did actually drop them with the bushwhacker. Dan said that this isn't a competition, but I'm very competitive, especially when it comes to Dan. So in my eyes, this is absolutely a competition that I want to win. I'm very glad I've got the solid bags as well, because I think for this time of year, they are such a good tactic. Everyone talks about single hook bait fishing this time of year. And for me, a solid bag is the ultimate single hook bait. You've got a rig presented all the time with a nice parcel of bait around. I just don't think you can beat it at this time of year going into sort of early spring. So I think I'm in a very good position. Like I said, I think I'm on fish with one of the rods. And yeah, I want to beat Dan today. So the speed load range consists of three different sizes of PVA bags in two different mount speeds. We've got fast mount and slow mount. Fast mount is what you want for this time of the year when the water's cold. If you go for the slow mount this time of year, you're going to get lots of that PVA gunk sort of stuck around your rig, which obviously you don't want. And then the slow mount is ideal for warmer weather, and if you're fishing in sort of deep water, when you want to hold that bag together as it's falling through the water column, you don't want it all melting before it hits the bottom, because then you're not going to get the effect of the actual solid bag. It comes in three sizes: small, medium, and large. Personally, I like going with the medium one. It's a nice amount of bait. Perfect all-round one. However, you may want the small one from time to time if you only want the tiny little mouthful of bait to go alongside your hook bait, or if you want to get a lot of bait out there, then the large one is one to go for. But just make sure you sort of beef up your test curve of your rod if you're going to cast out them big, heavy, large PVA solid bags.
We've got our first bite. I've actually left this one a little bit longer. I was quite confident and I was just moving the other one about really, and this is the super single. I left for a couple of hours and we're away. Let's have that then. What is PVA mesh or PVA funnel web? It's like a spider's web, if you like, of this PVA material. It tends to come on these tubes and you fill the tube with bait, which goes into the PVA mesh. You tie it in a knot, you tie another knot, and you're left with these little parcels of bait. Like I say, they're easy to hook onto your rig, cast them out there, the PVA disperses, and that pile of bait is then left around your rig. And there we have it. Into early afternoon now, so it did take a little bit longer than I thought, but it was that super bright one which did it in the end. I'm hoping this is the start of a little feeding spell. I have switched both over now to that bright single hook bait approach, put them both in the same zone, and hopefully we can have a couple more before the day's out.
So the sun's come out a little bit, and it just made me think that the fish could be getting into the shallows a little bit more. I decided to go into this corner where the sun's been sort of hitting the reeds. I know it slopes up a little bit, so I'm thinking maybe instead of having all my eggs in one basket out in the middle of the open water, put one into the shallows where the fish could creep into. I mean, it's not a lot of warmth, it's still pretty cold, but any sort of sunlight they do love at this time of year, so I think it'd be foolish to ignore this spot down here. You've got to imagine when the carp's going in and feeding on these solid bags, it is such a small sort of mouthful they're going in. It's a couple of mouthfuls, they're coming in, sucking it down. So you don't want a real long rig. You want something nice and short, nice and supple. It's going to fly back into the fish's mouth and come in contact with that lead straight away. So really be mindful of that. Don't go too long with your rig. Keep it nice and short, maybe like 3-4 inches, so it's all staying nice and neat inside that bag. And go for a supple hook link, go for armour link, because that's going to fly back and it's just going to aid you so much more. I also like to go for quite a small hook bait, just because of the mix I put in a solid bag. They are smaller food particles to make it nice and compressed, nice and tight. So if you go for a 20mm hook bait, it's going to look very out of place. So 12mm citrus wafter, yeah, that's my go-to normally for solid bags.
Well, the rod went back out. I released that last fish. It didn't take long, so it's gone again. I really think it must be a bite time. You know, I had left that one, I'd said on the last fish, I had left that rod there for actually a couple of hours in the end. And now I've just had 2 runs in the space of half an hour. Another small one of the little stockies by the looks of it, but we'll take that. There's probably, for me, there's 3 main benefits of why I'd use PVA mesh. Firstly, it's the anti-tangle properties, especially if I'm using a supple rig, being able to cast something out which gives the hook bait that little bit more weight. Even if it's a couple of boilies or if it's a small stick, it just tends to kick it away from the rest of my lead setup, which means it's very hard for that rig to tangle. Secondly, the obvious one is to leave a parcel of bait around my rig. You know, it's all well and good, as I've been doing today, casting out a single hook bait, but if the opportunity is there, why not add some added attraction with some bait around your rig? You know, this might be in the form of a bit of pellet or some stick mix, or even 2 or 3 whole boilies that when that PVA mesh melts, it's left, a few boilies are left around your hook bait. And the final one is, for me, to protect that hook point. By sliding that mesh onto your rig and sliding that hook point into that PVA bag, it guards that hook point from getting nicked or dinked on the way down or getting caught up in anything on the bottom. The PVA then melts and it reveals your hook lying there, sharp as anything, ready to hook a carp. And that's 2-0 to me. I said it wasn't a competition, but now I'm winning, Henry's losing. Now the PVA mesh, it comes in 2 different variations. There's the standard funnel web and then there's our ultra weave. The ultra weave, there's just a tighter knitting of mesh. It's basically double the amount of mesh, which just means it takes longer to melt. You know, when you're casting into a very deep water, the last thing you want is your mesh bag to melt halfway down. The ultra weave means that it just lasts that little bit longer. You know that bag's hit the bottom, you know it's gonna melt, and just leave a parcel of bait around your hook bait. It's not melted halfway down and just spread your bait everywhere.
Well, old Danny Yeo's done very well. He's had 2 fish in quick succession, and as everyone knows, sort of this winter fishing, the fish do like to group together, so I think Dan's found them. He's done well for us. Like he said at the start, it's me and him together against the fishery here. Dan said that this isn't a competition, but yeah, I want to beat Dan today. So I think it'd be rude if I didn't. cast exactly to where he's just been catching, because I'd say it's kind of in both of our water. I could definitely cast to it. So I'm just going to wait till he does fish photos, and then I'm going to sneak a rod over there. And then it gives you a proper test to see which one's better, mesh or solid bags, because we're both on the fish then. Right now, he's the only one on the fish, so you're not getting a fair test basically. So I think it's a good thing that I do it. Cheers, Dan. It's for the greater good. Without a doubt, the biggest benefit of the solid bags for me are the presentation. It just means that wherever you cast, you know you're fishing. It's a very safe rig in that regard. Also, in addition to that, I think you kind of got two options when you want to cast at show and fish and have a rig presented and be safe in the knowledge knowing that you're presented when you're casting them show and fish. And I think one option is a chod, and the other option is a solid bag. And I think a solid bag is just that little bit better because you've got that tight food parcel. And also I think that the solid bag's a much better hooker than the chod. I always feel like the chod isn't the best rig in the world for actually hooking carp. So I think you've got those two options around spring. When the fish are moving around, they're jumping, they're getting the parasites off them, they're telling you where they are. You just need to flip rigs to them. And I think that the best presentation for that is a solid bag. Just chewing the fat with tone there about what bites we like best in fishing. And we've had an absolute screamer on the rod down to the margin. Nice to join in the action after Dan has had a couple. There we go, in the net. Hey, nice. Oh, a long time coming, but we got one. Bigger than Dan's, I reckon, as well. In terms of the rest of the terminal tackle setup, in addition to that short, supple, braided hook link, I'll go for a 3-ounce lead. Anything more than that and you're in the danger of making the bag quite heavy and not getting as compact as you'd like, anything smaller than that, I just don't think you really drive that hook home, and I love a big lead. So yeah, 3 ounces is normally what I go for. I also like having a short length of Klingon leader. I'll actually go for the 65 pound here. Where it's that little bit thicker, it's a lot nicer for the bag to grip onto when using that speed load system. So I'll go for the heavier size, not because of the breaking strain's important if I'm fishing snags or anything. Yes, it does help, but the main thing is it's just that little bit easier for the actual bag to grip to. And if you're doing a big chuck, you're going to want that slightly heavier leader material. Also, when you're using that leader, it means that you can get a few bags tied up, ready to go. And it's a very simple case of maybe you have 4 or 5 ready to go for a day session. And when you've had a fish or you want to recast, you can just whip in the old one, cut off the line, tie a new one on, and you're good to go. Well, there we go. Not the biggest carp in the world. I'll definitely take it, especially after watching Dan catch a couple on the speed load solid bag. Fish down in that margin, absolutely ripped off. And for a late winter, early spring day session, not doing too bad.
I've heard you're cold, wet, haven't got your waterproofs, and you're ready to go home.
Yeah.
Have you had enough?
Summary. Yeah, it's been good fun.
You had a good day?
I've had a good day.
Has it whet your appetite for the season ahead?
Yeah, I'm ready for south of France, I think, in a couple of weeks instead of this weather.
I think so too. Call it a day?
Call it a day.
Come on, let's get you out of them wet clothes.